All right, ready to get a little personal?
Personal's right.
We're diving deep into excerpts from Second Corinthians today.
Oh, yeah. One of Paul's most, well, raw letters.
Definitely raw. Along with some background, too, of course.
You gotta set the stage, right?
Yeah, so we can see not just what he's saying, but why.
The why is huge.
Totally. It's like a window into the early church.
Super messy, full of drama, just like...
Well, like churches today, I guess.
Exactly. But also timeless wisdom.
Right.
Yeah.
About faith, resilience, and man, that whole...
Life being flipped upside down thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating because in 2 Corinthians, it's not just like...
Paul's greatest hits.
Yeah, not just the highlight reel. We see him behind the scenes.
Struggling. I mean, right from the jump, he's on the defensive.
Totally. There's even this stuff about super apostles.
Super apostles. Like, what is that? Some kind of ranking system?
Right. It sounds so strange to us now.
It does, yeah. So what's the deal with that?
Well, turns out church drama's not a new invention.
Oh, I bet. So infighting, power struggles back then too?
Oh, yeah. Paul was facing some harsh criticism.
Like what? What were they saying about him?
Accusations, flat out, of being a fake apostle.
Whoa! Serious stuff.
Imagine you're pouring your life into this.
Spreading the gospel, risking everything.
Yeah, and then people are like, nah, you're a phony.
Ouch. So how does he respond to that? I mean, does he...
Pull out his resume.
Yeah, like, hey, remember all those miracles?
I healed the sick. I cast out demons. What more do you want?
Right.
He does mention the hardship, sure.
Like, hey, I've suffered for this message.
Exactly. But what's striking is how he links that to...
It's a weakness.
Yeah, it's not this boastful, I'm so strong thing.
Or like, I'm human, I need God's strength.
Exactly. He even talks about this, like, mystery ailment.
Oh yeah, the thorn in the flesh thing, that always gets me thinking.
Right. 2 Corinthians 12, he's begging God to take it away.
And God's like, nope, my grace is sufficient.
Because God's power is made perfect in weakness.
But what does that even mean? Seriously, does God want us to be weak?
It's a paradox, right?
Yeah.
Challenged people for centuries.
Makes my head spin a little, honestly.
Think of it this way. When we're strong, self-sufficient.
We rely on ourselves.
Exactly. It's when we hit our limits, can't do it alone.
That's when we're truly open to God.
Yeah. It's not about being miserable or passive.
More like recognizing our need.
And letting God work through our weakness.
Okay, I'm kind of starting to see it, but it's deep, man.
It is. And it reminds me of how Paul talks about reconciliation.
Oh, big theme in 2 Corinthians, right?
Huge. But it's more than just patching things up, you know.
Deeper than that, right?
It's radical. Change of identity, purpose, how you see the world.
Like hitting the reset button on everything.
Exactly. He uses this super intense language, chapter 5, verse 17.
The old is gone. The new is here. That's heavy stuff.
Powerful.
But how does that connect to reconciliation? I mean, is it like...
Becoming so perfect we don't hurt others anymore.
Is that the goal?
That's where it gets even more interesting, because he goes on to say, we shouldn't judge others by worldly standards.
Wait, so it's not about being flawless?
No. It's about seeing everything differently, including ourselves.
So the transformation changes our perspective.
Yeah, radically.
Okay. That makes me think about how quick we are to judge, you know?
Label people without really seeing them?
Totally. But then how do we even do that? Stop judging, I mean.
Great question, and one we can unpack more, but what's important here is this transformation is core to Paul's own need.
To reconcile with the Corinthians.
Yeah. He's not just smoothing things over.
It's more like inviting them into this new way of being, based on grace, understanding, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And it all goes back to his own weakness, you know.
He's not coming from a place of superiority, but like...
shared humanity.
Yeah, we're all messed up, needing grace.
And that's the starting point for real connection, I think.
It's like vulnerability is the key.
Powerful stuff, right? And it leads us right into this other mind-blowing concept.
Oh boy, hit me with it.
Okay, the ministry of reconciliation.
Ministry of what now?
Reconciliation. Like, are we all supposed to be, like...
peace negotiators?
Yeah, kinda. But not in a, like, you know...
UN meeting or something.
No, not that. Though Paul does call believers.
Ambassadors for Christ, right? I remember that.
It's a pretty big deal when you think about it.
It is, yeah, but it's not political maneuvering, is it?
No, it's something way more radical, way deeper.
So, okay, not countries making up, then what?
Reconciliation between God and humanity.
Whoa, okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, but it makes sense, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, in theory.
Right, but then where do we even begin with something like that?
I'm picturing myself with a megaphone, is that right?
No, not quite. It all starts with our own
Our own what?
personal reconciliation with God.
Okay, so back to the basics.
Yeah, but not in a boring way.
I'm listening.
Remember that line, the old has gone, the new is here?
Oh yeah, 2 Corinthians 5.1 serum, super powerful.
And it's not just a feel-good saying, you know.
Deeper than that.
It's about a fundamental identity shift.
Okay, so not earning God's favor by being good.
Right, recognizing that change has already happened.
Because of Christ, right.
Yeah. And once we get that, it changes everything.
Right, how?
We're not just trying to avoid hell or,
Rack up good deeds.
we're living out of this new identity, this reconciled state.
Makes sense.
And that's what makes us want to share it with others.
So it's not about shoving beliefs down people's throats.
No. It's about helping them understand.
That God's offering forgiveness, a fresh start.
Exactly. And man, we need that message today.
Don't we, though?
Our world is so fractured, angry, polarized.
Yeah, we're not great at listening to each other.
We need people who embody that love and forgiveness.
Bridge builders, not wall builders.
Beautifully said.
Makes you think about how we talk about faith, though, you know?
Oh, yeah, how we approach it?
It can get so focused on rules, judgment.
Totally. But starting from that place of being reconciled,
changes the whole vibe.
it does. It's not about being right, but about sharing hope.
It's a beautiful idea, but honestly, it's kind of daunting, too.
Yeah, I get that.
Like, how do I, little old me, become an ambassador?
It doesn't have to be some huge, grand gesture.
I'm relieved to hear that.
It starts with the small things, honestly.
Give me an example.
A kind word, choosing to forgive, really listening.
Even when you disagree.
Especially then.
Yeah, tough, but good.
Right. Reflecting Christ's love in every interaction.
So it's less about the big theological stuff.
And more about how we treat each other.
Day to day, yeah.
In those small moments, we become agents of reconciliation.
Bringing healing, hope.
Powerful, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Paul on the defensive, strength through weakness, and this whole
ministry reconciliation thing.
Big stuff. What else is jumping out at you from this letter?
Oh, there's so much. But one thing that always gets me is how Paul talks about the new covenant, you know?
Compared to the old one with Moses and the stone tablets and all that.
Exactly. Like, is he saying the Old Testament's irrelevant now?
I've wondered about that, honestly.
Not at all. He actually makes a beautiful comparison.
I'm intrigued.
He says the new covenant isn't chiseled in stone, but inscribed on the hearts of believers.
Oh, I like that.
It's not external rules, but an inward transformation.
Flowing from our relationship with God.
That's it. And instead of condemnation, it's
ministry of the Spirit, bringing life.
Freedom, yeah, all that good stuff.
Okay, so less about outward obedience, more about internal change.
Right, but then how do we relate to the Old Testament then?
Is it just like an ancient history book?
It's a great question, and one that's caused a lot of,
debate?
Yeah, some strong opinions. But I think the key is...
Understanding what?
That the new covenant doesn't erase the Old Testament. But fulfills it.
Yeah.
The Old Testament points us towards...
Jesus.
Yeah. And the new covenant is those promises coming true.
It's like the seed and the flower.
A beautiful analogy.
But I still feel this tension, you know? Like, if it's written on our hearts, do we even need the actual words?
Tricky, right? Because we do need the words, the stories.
The teachings, yeah.
But Paul's saying our relationship with God isn't based on...
perfectly following the rules?
No, it's based on grace, on that internal change.
That happens when we surrender to Christ.
Exactly. So we need both, the written word and...
the Spirit working in our hearts.
Yeah, both hand, not either.
It's like when we study both Old and New Testaments.
You get this panoramic view.
Of God's whole plan, His love.
And how it all comes together in Christ.
Okay, I'm starting to see how it all connects, you know?
Yeah.
Paul's vulnerability, this radical reconciliation thing.
The new covenant on our hearts, it's like...
the tapestry of what it means to live a transformed life.
Beautiful image.
And he doesn't shy away from the messy parts either, does he?
Not at all. Struggles, doubts, conflict, it's all there.
But always pointing back to God working through it. And that's encouraging, isn't it? Like permission to be real.
Yeah, permission to be human.
To mess up, question, doubt, knowing God's grace is big enough.
It is. And it makes me think of another passage that gets to the heart.
Oh. Which one?
It's in 2 Corinthians 8 where Paul's talking about...
money. Oh, the collection for the church in Jerusalem.
Yeah, that one. Always makes people a little...
uncomfortable.
Right.
When the pastor brings up money, everyone's like...
shifting in their seats.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a touchy subject, but what's fascinating is how Paul links it to
To what?
To this whole idea of transformation and reconciliation.
So it's not just about, like, dropping some cash in the plate.
Way more than that. He's talking about the unity of the early church.
Oh, interesting.
How sharing their resources was an expression of their faith.
Like a tangible way to show they were connected.
Yeah, connected to each other and to God.
Makes sense.
And remember how he praises the Macedonians for their generosity.
Even though they were struggling themselves, right?
Yeah. It was about way more than just meeting a need.
It was an overflow of what was happening in their hearts.
Beautiful way to put it.
So it wasn't guilt or obligation, but like...
joyful, overflowing generosity.
Wow.
And then, of course, he contrasts that with the Corinthians.
Who weren't quite so generous.
Yeah, he kind of calls them out, you know.
A little tough love.
Yeah. But his focus is on the heart behind the giving.
Not just the amount, huh?
Right. He wants their giving to be cheerful, not grudging.
Oh, yeah. God loves a cheerful giver.
Famous line. But honestly, it's been used to...
guilt people into giving.
Yeah, which is so unfortunate.
Like, if you don't give enough, God won't love you.
That's so twisted.
But if we look at it in context, it means something totally different.
It does. It's not about manipulation, but about helping people see that.
True generosity flows from a transformed heart.
A heart that's experienced grace.
That's beautiful. And it makes you think about how we view giving today.
Right. Is it truly valued, or is it seen as an obligation?
Like a tax write-off, a way to get your name on a building?
Yeah, something to check off the list.
Man, that's a good question to ponder.
Yeah, it's almost like we've turned generosity into this.
Transaction.
Yeah, exactly. But Paul's pointing to something much,
Deeper.
yeah, way deeper, this connection between our resources.
And our hearts, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
It makes me think about those early Christians.
The ones who shared everything they had.
Yeah. It wasn't just about giving money. It was...
radical generosity, putting others first.
Totally.
Yeah.
But how do we even live that out today,
In a culture that's so focused on, like...
me, myself, and I.
success, getting ahead, all that.
It's a challenge, for sure. But maybe it starts with...
asking ourselves some tough questions.
yeah, like what are our real motivations for giving?
Are we doing it out of duty, or is it...
coming from a place of genuine love.
compassion for others?
Yeah. And maybe even asking, what are we...
clinging to...
yeah. What are we holding on to so tight that we're afraid to
let go.
It's easy to get trapped in that scarcity mindset,
Thinking we have to protect what's ours.
But Paul's message is rooted in abundance, this belief that...
God will provide.
Exactly. So it's not about giving out of fear, but out of...
trust, gratitude.
yeah, for what we've already been given.
And that kind of generosity, it can be...
transformative for us and for others.
powerful stuff. Okay, so we've talked about vulnerability.
Reconciliation, generosity, wow.
Big themes from 2 Corinthians. Anything else we need to,
unpack before we wrap up?
Yeah, is there something we've missed?
Well, one more thing that always sticks with me,
Okay, I'm listening.
Remember how we talked about Paul being on the defensive?
Yeah, people challenging his authority, the whole...
super apostles thing.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that.
It is, and I find it fascinating how he handles those attacks.
Yeah, he doesn't back down, but he's not,
vicious or trying to destroy them.
Totally different approach than we see a lot these days.
It is. He defends his ministry, but with this mix of...
boldness and humility.
Exactly. He even calls himself a fool at one point.
Wow, I don't remember that part.
It's like he's saying, look, you can think I'm crazy, but...
but you're not in it for the fame or power.
Yeah, it's not about ego or proving he's better than anyone.
He's appealing to their conscience, to God's judgment, ultimately.
And that's such a crucial lesson for us today, isn't it?
Especially in a world that's so...
divided.
Yeah, we love to argue, pick sides.
Paul reminds us that the goal should be...
building bridges.
yes, not walls.
Yeah.
Engaging with humility, even when we...
disagree strongly.
which, let's be real, is tough.
It is, but it's so important if we want to...
actually change anything.
So what's the takeaway here, for us reading this today?
I think Paul gives us a glimpse of what it looks like.
To live a transformed life.
Yeah, and it's not about being perfect or having it all figured out.
It's about letting God's grace shape us.
Embracing our weakness, extending that grace to others.
Like paying it forward.
And seeing the world through reconciliation, not judgment.
Powerful stuff.
And living that out, in our relationships.
Our finances, how we interact with the world.
Being in the world, but not of it.
That's a good one. Not easy, though.
Definitely a tension, a daily challenge, but...
yeah.
That's where...
the adventure lies.
I think
so much to think about. From Paul's own struggles to these.
Huge themes: transformation, reconciliation.
2 Corinthians is definitely not just some
Boring old letter.
It speaks to us today, challenges us to think about
Our faith, our relationships, how we live in this,
messy world.
and reminds us that even in our weakness,
God's grace is enough.
beautifully said, as you go from this deep dive,
I hope you'll keep wrestling with that question from 2 Corinthians 6.14:18.
what does it mean to be set apart but not withdrawn?
It's a question that'll keep shaping us, I think.
I think so too.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into 2 Corinthians.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.